Know when a relationship has run its course? Are you exhausted? Are you tired? Are you staying out of guilt? Are you staying because you'd rather just not be alone? Why are you there? And that's what we're going to talk about today, knowing when a relationship has run its course. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori. Damn, am I excited that you're here. This is going to be a great topic. This is a topic that has been requested multiple times. You'll notice that most of my podcasts are going to be geared towards you. What it's like to get out of victim mindset. What does it look like to be codependent? I always will do that because I want to put that back in your lap because that's where the power is. If we keep blaming everything else or other people, then we're giving all of that power to that person or those situations. But it's good every now and again to kind of drop in some relationship stuff because this, again, I'm putting it back in your lap. Yes, we are not an island of one. Yes, we do need, a community around us, but not at the sacrifice of your mental health, of staying in there because of any type of attachment theory, or you feel obligated because a person was there for you during these dark times. And this is a good topic this week. I have a great worksheet for you that will give you a great starting point, going through each one of the things and of why you're staying in it, what that might look like, where your fears are. And that is over on the Patreon. If you're interested in that, it's patreon.com/the positivity experience. There you can get that worksheet and every other worksheet that has been published since the inception of doing the worksheets. Didn't always have the worksheets, but it has been for a couple years. So if that's your jam, pop on over there. And I got to tell you, when I go through relationships, really, I want you to think about this before I even get into it. We're going to talk about the psychology behind it and science, blah, blah, blah. But I want you to think of a relationship. Maybe you've already gotten out of it. Or maybe you're like, God, is this exhausting me? Is this draining? Well, the world is not always going to be perfect. Every relationship isn't going to be on the top of the world every day. It's not going to be perfect sailing. However, if you're finding yourself more depleted than you are fulfilled, then this podcast is going to be for you. And again, before we jump into more of the nuts and bolts of it, I want you to realize that relationships, you're not obligated to have a relationship because someone did you a solid favor. Someone was there for you during dark times. By all means, please be appreciative. Know that that person and that situation promoted you. It was there. Where it becomes problematic is you're staying in it and you feel like I got to sacrifice my left arm because this person was there during these extremely dark times. And no matter what the relationship is, I'm kind of obligated to be in this forever and ever. And that is not the case. And we will go a little bit deeper into that because again, I want you to remind yourself staying out of guilt is not the same as staying out of love. Two very big different things. Staying out of guilt. Oh man, they were there for me. Oh man, what if they don't have anybody else? Which we're going to talk about some of those. It's the way that you convince yourself. You're going to always find a way to talk yourself out of leaving or always talk yourself as a way in to falling in love with the change. But remember, staying out of guilt is not the same as staying out of love. Plus, addition to that, you can't love someone more to get them to love you back. So the more that you're like, ooh, I love. By the way, that's attachment. That is attachment. That isn't love. Love isn't controlling. Love isn't sacrificing of your own peace. That's not love. That's attachment. Very important. If you love something and you love someone, I know that there's a saying, if you love this butterfly, set it free. If it comes back to you, it's yours. If it doesn't, it never was. That's true. That's definitely true. But that's not where I was going to go with that. If you truly have love for somebody, I mean, wholeheartedly love, not attachment, not expectations, you want that person to find their own happiness, even if you're not a part of that equation. That's love. Love says, damn, I'm going to be so sad if I'm not in that person's life. However, if they need me to not be in their life so they can find what works for them and their best life, I'm here for it. And I tell you, that is going to be pivotal in the change on how you see life and how you see things. Allowed to get upset, allowed to feel sad, but how much do you love? That's so important. People negate that. And it's difficult, but it's true. When you let somebody fly out of the empty nest, yes, it's going to be concerning. There's going to be times of setbacks. There's going to be times of tension. But they've got to find their way. And if you love them, even if you want them to change, they don't have to. Because one of the hardest things to do is to admit that that relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or familiar, it just isn't working anymore. Sometimes things just don't work anymore. It doesn't have to be some giant dramatic betrayal, but you feel drained, you feel isolated. Thin line here, okay? Thin gray line here. That can also be your expectations, where you are. Are you in codependency? Are you upset that the person isn't catering to you? Because there is that thin line. However, we fall in love with this idea. We've talked about this multiple times. You see a friend and they're out with their mom or they're out with their family and it looks like they're living their best life and you don't have that. Again, boy, do I relate to that. With my mom passing, with my dad being an alcoholic and everything underneath that umbrella, yes, I would see my friends and they would have this stability. And the funniest thing is my friend Kim, we've known each other since kindergarten. Her family was it wasn't always good either. Her family was very religious, very strict. But there was this sense of if I came over there, it was dinner, we would wake up, we'd have breakfast. It was a level of peace. Now, looking back on it, that was great. I wouldn't necessarily have wanted that long term either. But in my house, she liked to come to my house. There was no rules. We could stay up all night. This is going to date me a little bit, but there was a talk show host named Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson came on at 11 or 11:30 every single night. My big flex was I get to stay up and watch Johnny Carson because every other kid had to go to bed at a normal time, whatever that was. I didn't have to. So I could sit up and watch Johnny Carson. And again, that's my big flex. So if someone didn't want the rules, they could come to my house, but I wanted the stability. It's such an odd thing. It's having straight hair, wanting curly hair, having curly hair, wanting straight hair. You want these things because you're seeking stability, but you're also seeking happiness. So in your mind, when you're looking at relationships, you don't want to have outgrown them. You don't want to accept sometimes that those relationships were never as you wanted them in the first place. Really think about this and really sit with this question. When in your lifetime, doesn't have to be right now, in your lifetime, say it's a family, friend, doesn't matter, and you got out of that friendship or you were upset about that friendship leaving, how many times did you say to yourself, damn, was this even ever really a relationship? Like, what was I just in disillusion? Maybe you were. Maybe that's a real thing, but maybe it just served its purpose. I know you've heard reason, season, lifetime. People are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I know you've heard that. You don't always get to put somebody in the lifetime if in fact they're there for a season. You might want it to be different. But my God, this is so important because this allows you to distance from it what is not serving you. And there's this acceptance that says, oh my God, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe my mom and I will never have a good relationship. Maybe my in-laws will never see me for who I am. There is this acceptance that comes with it. And again, you're allowed your feelings. You're allowed to feel sad. Absolutely. But don't get caught there and don't try to negotiate it and be like, well, it wasn't all bad. Well, no, most things and people are not inherently 100% bad. That's very true. But are you holding on to that for the sake of having it versus not having it? But if you find yourself being drained, and again, more than not, there's no scenario where you're going to be fulfilled all the time. But if you find yourself being drained versus fulfilled, you're constantly questioning your own needs because now you don't even know what you need. You're like, well, I mean, that'd be nice, but I need to sacrifice my peace for this person. That's people pleasing. We've discussed that at length in a few different podcast episodes, but most recently just a couple weeks ago. So go back and search that one and find that, especially if you're on Patreon. There's a really good worksheet to accompany that. And you'll be able to put them, both of them side by side, and you'll see where it's more love versus just attachment and people pleasing. So you're not alone. And what does it feel like to be drained versus fulfilled? Think about this. When is the last time that you have found when you're around a person, friend, lover, family, I don't care, and you just go, oh my God, every time I leave, I feel like I ran 84 marathons. I feel crazy because now they're gaslighting me. And then I'm thinking, is it me? Am I the problem? Oh my God. So when is the last time that you felt that? Maybe it's everybody around you. You know that there is the thing that says you are the sum of the 5 people around you. So then you have to look around and say, are these 5 people around me people I'm trying to make them? Or are these 5 people around me people who are really supporting my growth? And you know the cruel joke, but it's true. Not cruel joke, but whatever. A lot of the people who are your family are people who are not related to you. Remember, you have relatives and you have family, and they are not always the same thing. It's the issue comes when you're trying to make it something that you're not. And I think that there's a fair desire to that. These are our caregivers. These are the people who we're supposed to look up to. These are the people who are supposed to protect us. These are the people who are supposed to give us the tools, which, by the way, they can only give you the tools that they have. They might not have the tools to give you. They may absolutely not have the tools to give you. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you're going to get the broken version, and you might be used as a pawn. The amount of times that I see this in my practice, and I have clients all over the world listening to this right now. I have clients all over the world that we do Zoom with, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, what religion you're in, what culture you're in. I have seen it countless times where a child is used as a pawn. A child is used as a pawn to get this or to prevent this. Now you're the child. Think about being the child. You're being told what a horrible mom you have or horrible dad you have. And then, it doesn't really matter about you. It matters about what they're gaining from you. And then you have the family who is somewhat neglectful emotionally, and you go out in public and now they're showering you with this praise. And you're like, what is happening right now? Well, of course you're going to be uncertain. Of course you're going to be fishing for this love because you're getting confused. So really think about that. When you are trying to make someone see you, make someone love you, you should never have to focus on trying to make somebody love you. Ever. Like never. And if you feel that you've outgrown that dynamic, but you have this guilt of fear keeping you stuck. Oh man, you know what? I really want to get out, but oh my God, like I was saying in the beginning, they were there during this dark time. By absolute all means, be grateful, celebrate, love them, great. But there may come a time where that relationship does not benefit you anymore. It's not cold, it's true. And if you're holding on to a relationship just because you feel obligated to it, you're not doing the other person a solid either, especially in a love relationship. Oh, I don't want them to be hurt. Well, guess what? They're already going to get hurt because you're staying out of pity. If you're staying out of pity, you're not a martyr. You're not doing someone a solid favor. No, you're hurting them ahead of time without them even knowing. And therein itself lies the facts. Because you are focused on how it is for yourself, and you think, like I said, that you're doing this giant favor so someone doesn't get hurt. But why wouldn't you let them free themselves up so they can find a better connection? Will they hurt? Probably. Will they feel devastated? Probably. Will they survive it? They will. They will. So will you. And it's this weird thing, and I don't know if you've ever seen this. It might be you, but I know you've probably experienced this with other people. They don't want to be with you, but they don't want anybody else to have you. And that's confusing. You're like, okay, well, fine. You let me go, or, you're not my friend anymore. And now I'm doing stuff and you have the audacity at this point to get offended. Well, wait a minute. You can't have it both ways, but you can't control that. You can, however, focus on yourself and the narrative within yourself. Now, there's psychological and there's emotional signs that it's run its course. So let's talk about what are the signs that the relationship is no longer in alignment with you? Because that's what we're talking about. Alignment. Yes, connection, but also alignment. And before I go deeper into that, you will change, hopefully, right? You will change. You will continue this growth journey. You will move on that journey. And again, as a reminder, I will tell you everything I tell a new client with me the first 30 seconds is the same people who start on your journey may not remain on your journey or end up on your journey. Just going to have to accept that. And if you're not there yet, then you might not be ready to take that on. Because when you change, people aren't going to necessarily like it or they're not going to vibe with it. Valid, because that might be the same for you. So sometimes people naturally just distance from it. And other times you have to be like, wow, this is not in alignment with me anymore. if you have these irritations, and I don't mean just surface irritations, because I don't care who you are and how much in love you are with somebody or how great of friends you are, they're going to irritate you and you're going to irritate them. That is natural life, especially if you live with somebody. My God, there are going to be countless times you're like, God, do I look good in an orange jumpsuit? Probably not. So I probably shouldn't create a crime here, because that's a normal part of anything. Anytime somebody is in your space and there's moods and there's changes and there's no sleep and you're hangry, that is not abnormal. So I don't mean just a typical surface irritation. I mean, they are deeper, repeated patterns. Now that indicates that disconnection, misalignment, and or emotional depletion. Think about being emotionally depleted. Now, a lot of this lies on you, not them. Well, it all lies on you, not them. What are you holding on to? The familiarity. Oh my God, I can't say that word. Familiarity. Whatever. You're holding on to that because at one point that is what made you safe. Just like if you've been in chaos. If you grew up in chaos and you grew up in uncertainty and you grew up where you were always going to battle, that's what you know. So even if you know it's healthier to leave that, or you want something more peaceful, you have zero idea what that identity might look like without it. It's going to be a little scary, and that's okay. It really is okay. But it's understanding that a lot of times you're going, God, what am I staying out of guilt? Am I making excuses that I'm getting depleted or irritated? Am I making that up? Because sometimes it is going to be you, but not at the cost of this being all the time. There's a level of misalignment. If you have to constantly explain your boundaries, which by the way, if you have to explain them, they're not boundaries. Boundaries carry consequences. One consequence, say it once and then follow through. But if you're finding yourself always having to change a boundary and having to do this with a boundary and it's just not in alignment anymore, but it was familiar, then it's time to say, why would I hold on to the familiar and not open up space for something or someone that might fulfill me more? Think of it as decluttering. By the way, you could be somebody else's clutter too. This isn't about everybody else. Again, goes back to if you love someone, you might not be beneficial in their life anymore. And that's okay because we all go in and out of our own growth. But think of yourself as decluttering a drawer. Right now, it's all filled. It's all filled with all these things. And God, you love those socks. Those socks were your favorite. These were the best underwear you've ever had. Bra's perfect. You know, your boxers, whatever. They're great. And you've loved them. But you want to go buy some more. You want to buy new. You want to buy things that fit you better. You want to find things that are in alignment with you more. Well, you can only buy so much. And then you're trying to shove it in there. And you're grabbing things. And these have holes in them. But these are new. And it's just all over the place. So you have to think of it as decluttering. You have to remove, empty that, take something healthier, put it in its place. It's that one in, one out kind of rule if you're doing organization, just a side note. And this is where you have to say, am I willing to do that? Is there a level of emotional depletion that I need to address? Because here's a sign that that relationship is done and over. I don't care how you want it to be. It is what it is. This one, again, is so important, and that is you're shrinking instead of growing. You're shrinking yourself instead of growing. You're not engaging in the joy of this change. You're kind of dulling it down some. You're kind of, okay, well, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable about my growth. Why are we focusing there? Then you're dimming yourself down. If you ever have to shrink yourself in any way, shape, or form, because you're worried about how somebody feels, then you definitely know that you're still in the area to need growth. And that's perfectly fine. If you're silencing what your desire is, what your goal is, what your need is, if you're silencing that because you're like, oh God, I just don't want the conflict, which we know goes into avoidant attachment. Go listen to that podcast for sure. Not just that though, because you're trying to hold on to this relationship. So if you're like, God, every time I bring this up, they're avoidant or they're dismissive and I just don't want to cause drama. Well, then you got to say, why am I holding on to this relationship that's over? Because it's over. Because if you can't fully express yourself, if you can't fully celebrate your growth, if you can't fully do this, then you're not in a real relationship. You are cloaking yourself as a chameleon to fit into a box. Then can the person really love you? Or are they loving the version that you're presenting? It's not the same thing. A person can love this version and can be like, oh my God, I'm so in love. And you could be like, I feel so empty right now. This person isn't giving me what I need. Well, I guess not. You're not telling them who you really are. They're giving you things to the best of their capability based on what you're demonstrating. So if you find yourself not being able to be yourself or choosing to not be yourself and you feel like you can't fully express it, then that's how you know this relationship, it might be time to call quits on this relationship. Because here's a big one, one of my favorite ones. If your evolution makes them uncomfortable, not your problem. If your evolution is constantly questioned, or there's passive aggression behind it, or there's, the under the breath, like, okay. If that's there, it's time. That relationship has reached its course. You're doing the emotional labor. You're the one that is initiating those check-ins. Hey, are you okay? Like, are you okay with, like, are you good? I mean, that's great for communication, but are you the one that's doing that? Or are they constantly demeaning or second guessing what your growth is and you're trying to make it make sense and have a conversation? They don't want to have a conversation. They want you to somehow or another admit, whatever that means, or take accountability for the fact that you're doing something wrong or you're being selfish, whatever the case may be. But if you find that you're doing this emotional labor, you're trying to prevent that conflict. You're trying to repair any type of conflict, and you're regulating both people's emotions. You can barely manage and regulate your own. Stop trying to focus on somebody else's emotions. Because if you're worried about how they're going to feel, what that's going to look like, I want to have a conversation about my needs. Oh God, but I don't want them to feel some kind of way. So now I have to manage it because this is what you're doing. You're projecting. Doesn't that sound exhausting? I know for a fact, because some of you are my clients, but I know for a fact that some of you listening are like, my God, she just described me. Then what are you going to do about it? Honestly, what are you going to do about it? It's not supposed to be easy. You can do hard things though. Humans can do hard things, I promise. So you have to say to yourself, what is my resistance? Do not tell me it's the uncertain. Do not tell me it's the unknown, because that is where everything gorgeous exists. And everything 10,000% works out there, either as you choose for them to be and how you want them to be, or the lesson in which you're supposed to learn. And I know for a fact that some of you are like, my God, I want to get out of this relationship. Then what's stopping you? Now, sometimes if you live with the person, it might be a little bit ickier because you're going to have to plan a little bit more. But if you don't live with these people, you have to say why. What is it that I'm holding on to? What is it? What discomfort am I avoiding? That's when you can start showing up for yourself, because that emotional labor will drain you. It will burn you out, and it'll create a massive amount of resentment. Because if you feel like you're working for the relationship and then they just show up, you're like, my God, what the hell is happening here? I'm the one rolling all the silverware at the diner. I'm the one rolling up all the silverware and they're taking it and they're just, hey, thanks for the silverware. Well, you're making it easy. Easy for them, not easy for you. And they also know at that point it's easier to shut you down. And you're also exhausted. My God, you're like, yeah, whatever. Like to them, you're like, oh my God, this is just a lot, because you're the one doing the emotional labor. You're the one showing up. You're the one trying to manage the emotions. Why are you doing that? Why are you willing to hold on to a relationship for the sake of not being alone? I'm going to tell you right now that until you're okay with being alone, it's going to be hard pressed for you to get yourself in a growth mentality. Sometimes you got to be alone. Sometimes you got to clean house and you got to start fresh. And that means you're going to have to take time. As I've said multiple times, there's no one-stop shop. There's no magic pill, no magic podcast, no magic therapy. There's nothing magic. It is time consuming. It is going forward. It's going backwards. It's pivoting when you can. It's removing yourself and allowing yourself to be removed from situations that aren't serving you. That's how we grow. Hey, it's going to be a little uncomfortable. That's okay too. And that's why when you stay out of fear of being alone, you're telling yourself, but you know what? They're not all bad. Well, again, that's true. Most people aren't 100% bad. Now, they can be 98% bad, but they're not 100% bad. That's just not a thing. So if you say to yourself, well, they're not all bad, why are you negotiating then? Why are you negotiating? Listen, again, it's not always going to be a cakewalk. So why are you negotiating the fact that you should stay or you're making excuses for them? Why? And because if you fear being alone more than you want to be with them, that's a problem. Just because you want to be with somebody doesn't mean it's healthy for you. I love chocolate. If I sit there and I eat chocolate every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, it's not good for me. I can love it, but it's not good for me. Because if the connection feels like an obligation versus a choice, if that connection, you feel like you are staying connected out of obligation, kind of what I was saying in the beginning. They were there in a dark time. They really helped you. And let's be dramatic. And maybe it isn't dramatic for some of you. They kind of gave you a reason to still exist in a time that you didn't think you were going to exist. That does not mean that you owe them. That does not mean that you owe them. And I think that's the biggest thing for you. Because if resentment has replaced connection, you know it's time to go. If you have a level of resentment versus connection, you know it's time to go. If you feel irritated more than you have joy, now some of that could be on you. Some of it you have to say, what is about me? Is it me? Am I allowing myself to sit in an irritated place because I'm not working on myself? Well, that's a little different. It's a little different. But if you feel irritation more than joy, then you got to say, what is it that I'm holding on to? Why do I want this to be different? Why do I want them to see the light? Why do I want them to come to Jesus and be like, yes, I see it? If you stopped bringing anything up about your feelings or your needs, and you find that it's not productive, you're like, just keep saying it. Nobody's listening. It's not them anymore. It's you. If, I always use the circus tent. If you keep going into the circus and you don't like the clowns, and every time you walk into the circus tent, you're like, the clowns are here. I don't understand. The clowns don't listen when I tell them I don't want them to be here. You keep walking into the tent. So if you say to yourself, oh my God, I want to be able to have my feelings heard, but they're not seeing me. I don't feel value. You got to know what you're working with. If you know your husband, your mom, your sister, your spouse, whatever, if you know what it feels like to be around them and they have demonstrated this pattern, why are you sitting in that hope of something different? It's not them. There's a point you have to take ownership and accountability for where you are. Stop saying mom does this, dad does this. Listen, if it's a one-off, you can be like, what the hell is happening here? And I will tell you, I will never say somebody can't change. That's untrue. People can all change. People can all grow. They have to want to. They have to want to. So you can't hold out and go, ooh, I hope they're going to change. I hope they're going to change. They're going to see the light. They're not until they choose to. So this is so, so important because, again, if you don't feel valued and seen, number one, you have to say, what value do you see in yourself? Let's take them out for a minute. What value do you see in yourself? Because if you can't see your value, then you're going to try to be the chameleon to fit into somebody else's viewpoint of what they see as value. That's just not a thing. So why do we stay when it's not working? Well, first and foremost, you're going to have to unhook from a few things. We stay, we know, out of fear of being alone, codependency, attachment, need for just communication, and you're willing to sacrifice that at all given points and stops. But if you disconnect, until you're willing to disconnect, it's going to be hard for you to leave this relationship. But you need to unhook from they're not all bad. They're not a bad person. Well, no, most people aren't. They just sometimes make poor choices or there's bad situations. Doesn't make them bad. But if you are holding on to, well, they're not a bad person, then you're going to stay stuck in this one-sided relationship. This is what you're going to have to unhook from if, in fact, you want to move forward. But they've done so much for me. Okay. Again, are you going to donate your left kidney because you feel that because they've done so much for you, now have this lifelong obligation? Is that where you are? It's something that you really have to say why. Oh, this one is big. Oh my God, this one is big. But they don't have anybody else. They don't have anybody else. What? What? How is that your responsibility? How is that your responsibility? They don't have anybody else. So you would rather sacrifice who you are and your needs. For X amount of years, you have been basically neglected from caregivers, and now you're continuing the cycle of self-neglect. And to sit there and go, but they don't have anybody else. You're not the martyr. You're not doing them a solid favor. If it's time to go, it's time to go. Could that be? Oh, and you know what? I didn't write this one down to tell you about, but this one is so true too. But we've been together I've known them for 30 years. And so what does that mean? You're stuck? Again, financially you might be, so we have to work on that. But if you feel this weird sense of obligation because you've been together, you've known each other for all this time, stop doing that. Because until you're willing to unhook from they don't have anybody else, oh God, you can listen to this all day long. It's not going to change until you're willing to be uncomfortable and you're willing to let them be uncomfortable. You can't manage, going back to what I was saying, you can't manage yourself and them. You don't have the position to manage their feelings, because if you're doing that, you're always going to neglect yourself. Because see, guilt alone makes you believe that their comfort matters more than your peace. Guilt says their comfort of not being alone matters more than your peace. That is where you have to say why. Why? Why do you feel that way? And if you find yourself stuck there, my God, you need to book an appointment with me right the second. Get off, you click my website and immediately do this, because this will be a cycle that you will stay in. You will live in this repeated cycle. And then you'll be able to get swayed by other people's manipulation and gaslighting. There's always this web. Hopeful potential. Oh, I'm going to stay because what could be? Not what is. You don't want to see what is. What could be. And sometimes it's, well, this used to be. I know this is a thing too. Well, this used to be good. Well, this used to, okay, is it today though? I don't care how it used to be. I used to look like a bikini model idol now. Well, I can't hold on to that. I can't hold on to what it was. It's where am I today? And I'm appreciative of where I am today, even though I'm going to be a bikini model, however I look anyway. But I know where I am today. And what could be is going to be. I'm going to be good with where I am, and I got to accept things as they are. Can I make changes? Cool. Is it acceptance? Cool too. But if you are clinging on to some past memories or idealized versions of who they were, think about this, and I see it all the time too. You break up, or friendship ends, and now you're like, oh my God, we had so many good times. Well, I'm sure you did have good times. But you're forgetting the fact of why you left in the first place, why you got out of it in the first place, why you felt isolated in the first place. Do not fall in love with hope and think, wow, when we went to Paris 15 years ago, it was amazing. We put the little locks on the fence. It was so romantic. Life was fabulous. Are you today, though? Are you today? That was 15 years ago. The last 5 years of your relationship has been hell. And we're going to hold on to some locks on a fence? That's because you're falling in love with this idea. We glorify and we idealize how that relationship was. But there's a reason why you're out of it. There's a reason. And if you are afraid of being the bad guy, you will make zero changes in your life. Until you're willing to be the villain in somebody's story. The only way to be the hero in yours is to be the villain in somebody else's. Because if you are always catering to them and now you have this boundary and you're living your best life and they don't like it, well, you're going to be the bad guy. You are going to be the bad guy, hands down, no doubt about it. Without a doubt. And that's the piece that you have to say, wow, okay, this is a me thing. What am I resisting? Because if you worry that they're going to paint you as selfish or cruel, then you're going to keep being a people pleaser. And they will paint you as that, and you don't even think about engaging in a smear campaign. They're going to say what they want to say. And if people do not want to hear your side of the story, screw them too. Like, you don't need to deal with that. You don't need to deal with it. And if you're over-explaining and trying to manage their reaction before you make your move, you know that you're still in people pleasing. You know that you're in a people-pleasing space. You're in a time of your life where you're in this growth point, but you're not exactly sure what that actually looks like. And that's okay too. There's an identity entanglement. We've talked about this. If you've tied your worth or your routine to that relationship, you have identity entanglement and or enmeshment. Entire podcast on enmeshment. Go back to it. If you have identity entanglement, you will have a very hard time leaving because you're attaching your worth. You ever see this? It might be you. You also might see other people. You're a couple, right? You're in a couple and you have couple friends or you have families or whatever, and you're going to split up. Well, somebody is going to, people are going to choose. You win this person, they win this person. It is what it is. And sometimes that's what you have a hard time with. You have a hard time with going, oh, but what if I lose? Is that losing though? Just because somebody isn't going to hang out with you, if you're gaining your sense of peace, that's a win. That's a win. Sometimes you're going to have to take the L. And if you fear not knowing who you are without them, that means it's time to get out right now. Your value, my loves, are not attached to anybody else. And if you're giving them that power, you are setting yourself up for disappointment and hurt at every single turn. And now you're going to have resentment. And now people are going to be like, what the hell is wrong with them because of your resentment? And see, there's some psychology behind relationship grief because it's ending the relationship. And that creates this idea that you're losing this version of yourself. And it's not losing it. You're just growing it, right? We outgrow clothes, right? We love our pants. We've outgrown them. We love our shoes. Maybe sometimes we outgrow them. But if you are grieving this version of yourself, this routine, the future that you imagined, I had this future. We were going to buy the house. We were going to have the 2.5 kids. Me and my friends, we were all going to buy old houses all in the same block and live together because we're best friends forever and ever and ever. That is what you got to let go of. You're unhooking for something that was your dream. Your goal, what you saw. I don't care what somebody said to you. That's what you're grieving. Don't get it twisted. You are grieving your identity of the version who you are. You're grieving the idea that this person had to fulfill your every woman need in order to demonstrate that you're loved. Your routine is broken and this future is now gone. Well, you know what? Imagine a different future. Now, what about you? Anytime you include somebody else in this future, you give them the power to go, oh my God, they've left. Now what am I going to do? Remember, your brain will always see change as a threat. So you pull back. That is a human critter brain type thing. But you just got to let your brain know, hey, it's okay. It's okay. Change is a little scary, but let's look and see what this could be. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to take the L and we're going to keep it moving because it's really a win. So how do you walk away without this chaos? Well, you're going to name your truth. There has to be truth, your truth, right? Don't wait for some giant breakdown. Now you're falling apart. There's this big breakdown. So let me give you a really good sentence and make it your own, change up the words. I no longer feel emotionally safe or connected here. Think about that. I no longer feel safe or emotionally connected here. This is a truth. Do you know, and this is scientifically proven or psychologically proven, sometimes you are afraid to even initiate that conversation and say that out loud because then you have to admit it. So this is the big first step for you. Or you can say, this relationship is asking me to betray myself to keep the peace. This is exactly what's going to happen. Sometimes that's a hard pill for you to swallow. This relationship is asking me to betray myself to keep the peace. Is that worth it to you? Is your peace more important than betraying yourself? You've been betrayed a lot in your life. Do you want to add to that? You want to piggyback on that? Because you don't deserve that. You deserve to have that self-love. You deserve to have that self-trust. You also have to detach with clarity. Don't leave it all willy-nilly. Now, you don't owe endless types of explanation, but honesty is good. Honesty, not explanation, honesty. Two very different things. Here is an example of that. Hey, John, I don't know, whoever, this connection is just not aligning where I'm going, and I'm no longer able to continue in this. It's not, and by the way, me telling you that this is impactful. I guess I should tell you that because I kind of ran into that. This connection isn't aligned with where I am going, and I'm no longer able to continue in it. You have to be direct and assertive. You have to be, because if you're not, you can't sit there and trying to coddle and manage emotions while trying to show up for yourself. And I'm showing up for myself, kinda. I don't want to hurt their feelings, but now I got to pussyfoot around them. And we're not doing that. You can't have it both ways. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. And you need to expect emotional withdrawal. Got to. For yourself, you got to expect emotional withdrawal. You might question yourself, oh my God, was this the right move? Holy crap. Oh my God, it wasn't all bad. What did I do? Was I acting on a whim? Well, no, you've been dealing with this for the last 8 years. I would hardly classify that as an impulsive decision. You may not want to see it that way, and that's a fact. That's where it comes into play. You also might miss them. That doesn't mean that the decision was wrong. Just because you miss someone doesn't mean that the decision is wrong. Believe you me, there will be a point in time, even if it was traumatic, if it was a trauma bond, even on some levels of abuse, there is the person that you miss that you wanted them to be. Not the abuse, obviously, but there is the idea of the person or who that person once was. So not so much from an abusive relationship. At that point, you kind of know, hey, this was a good exit. But if it was a traditional, just kind of like, oh my God, this wasn't good. I didn't feel seen. They weren't hearing me, blah, blah, blah. So you go, God, I miss them. I miss walking in the park with them. Yeah, but do you miss feeling emotionally disconnected? Do you miss walking on eggshells? Do you miss having to change who you are, all for the simple fact that you needed to go down and walk on a damn pier? Well, hell, call me. I'll walk the pier with you. I will. Let's go. Let's go. You don't need that one bit of joy when you're obviously forgetting about all this other stuff that you felt isolated in any of these relationships. Again, this isn't just about love. This is about family. It's about friendships, family, anything like that. Any relationship that you're in is an actual relationship. One doesn't get permissed more than the other. Gotta understand that. So what you have to remember is you can miss a person and still know that they're not good for your mental health. Let me repeat that. You can miss a person, but still know that they are not good for your mental health. So you want to surround yourself with joy. Don't isolate yourself. I know it's easy to, listen, different than being alone. Being alone means that you're seeing yourself, you're growing, you're learning new things. Isolation is like, oh my God, I'm miserable without this person. Oh my God, I don't want to be around people. There's two different things there. So you don't want to isolate. You want to rebuild your self-trust by making choices that are reflecting your growth and your truth. You can do that. That's you showing up for you. Because it's okay to outgrow relationships. You're allowed to want more. You really are. You're allowed to want more. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to discount myself. I'm going to give, discounts to who I am. All because you want someone to fill a void. You want someone to breathe oxygen in the same room that you're in. Do things that you can find joy that other people can't take from you. You know, I crochet. I'm always going to bring that up. You can go for walks. You can do amazing things. You can do amazing things that bring you joy. It's not everybody else. It definitely is not scrolling social media. So stop doing that. You guys know I do not scroll social media and I have a pretty big presence on there. I record things. I post them there. It's depleting for me. And every now and again, obviously I'll go on, I'll pull up a pattern or a recipe, or I'll give myself 10-minute pleasure looking at cowhoof videos or barnacles on turtles. I'll do that for about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then I'm off. Because I need something to bring me joy that is not attached to something else. A social media post, a friend, a guy. I need something for me. Now, the yarn store controls me a little bit. Michael's controls me just a little bit. Because if you do any type of crochet or anything, woo boy, that does control me a little bit. But that's a healthy thing. So I want you to keep that in mind. You're allowed to outgrow relationships and they're allowed to be outgrown for you. You deserve good things. And before you can even have a good relationship, it has to be from you. You have to find that voice for yourself. You have to show up for yourself. You have to give yourself self-trust and that joy. What you don't need is to change who you are. You don't need to cling on to hope. You don't need to try to maneuver your life because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. What you don't need is to just totally throw your piece out the window because you don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to disregard the fact that they were, there for you in a time of need. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you owe them your left kidney. What you do deserve is to feel peace. So you got to ask yourself right now, what relationships do I need to end?